What's a plot hole in a movie you just can't get over? Definitely the Ant-Man movies. The guy still weighs 200 pounds when he shrinks, and they acknowledge that the first time he uses a suit launching out of a tub and cracking a floor tile, then no more than 10 seconds later he breaks through drywall because he's so small and heavy, but then lands on a record player like he weighs nothing. To add a few more examples, a shrunken tank on a keychain, and shrinking down a building in the second movie and just wheeling it around. I've never seen a movie establish something and then contradict itself so quickly. I've seen people talk about this a few times in other threads, and the consensus always seems to be because time particles, like, apparently even, or perhaps especially, in the comics time particles were always wildly inconsistent and were used as a magic bullet solution to everything, so it's true to the source material, if nothing else. I've heard this issue was addressed by a character once, Mr. Fantastic, I think. He pointed out that the shit made no sense, but Pym just kinda shrugs it off. It's still stupid, but I like that bit of self-awareness. I always loved how Pym particles have consistently just stumped everyone in the Marvel universe. I don't know why. I guess it's just the setting of all these mystical, magical, otherworldly entities and beings. Dudes who can walk on walls, or wipe out everyone's mind with the blink of an eye. But it's always Pym particles that's always baffling to everyone. It's become one of the funniest running jokes to me. Doctor Strange basically confirmed that it's Magic Ike. I call it Count the Coats. I've been watching a lot of Hallmark movies to get my mind off the news, and I've noticed that whenever the girl goes back to her hometown or gets stranded in a cute little town over Christmas, she arrives with a small roll-around travel bag, and yet as the story progresses, she is seen wearing multiple different long wool and puffer coats and various pairs of boots. She would have needed a van to transport the amount of clothing she seems to have. One could almost make a drinking game out of it. This is my favorite so far, and I'm definitely game for this to be a drinking game when the 24-hour Christmas channel comes back. That in every Christmas movie where Santa is real and the adults are portrayed as non-believers in Santa, none of them question where the gifts come from on Christmas morning. I would just assume that Santa's uses some gas or some drug that affects parents into thinking they bought the gifts. The elves just hack their bank account. I assume that one parent thought the other parent had got the gifts they didn't recognize, but yours makes more sense ESP for bigger gifts. However, as a parent now myself, I can totally seeing my original assumption holding up. I do all the Christmas shopping for our family so often my husband doesn't know what he gave his side of the family. I could totally see thinking your spouse did it if it gets done every year. 8 million forms of communication and 3PO doesn't speak Jora? Okay. This is the best one I've seen so far. Anakin literally lives on Tatooine, and even if 3PO does understand, he doesn't say anything about it. Karate Kid. Mr. Miyagi sneaks Daniel into the tournament last minute because they didn't actually register, and he even steals a black belt to fake his credentials. Yet the tournament bracket has a Miyagi Dojo banner, complete with graphics and everything. Miyagi and the tournament organizers, and the owners of the Cobra Kai Dojo, were all just conspiring to bet on little kids beating the crap out of each other. There is a scene in The Notebook where a sign can be seen in a store window in Seabrook. The sign reads 3 peaches for $1. Now, I want to know one goddamn thing. What fucking peaches cost 33 cents a piece in 1940 South Carolina, nearly the epicenter of peach production? Peaches made of gold? 3 peaches for $1 in that time and place is highway robbery. Fuck that. How many times have you seen The Notebook? TBH, I've never watched it, and I'm just now learning it's based in 1940s South Carolina. Assumed it was based the year it came out. I'm fucking stupid. It's a good flick. They just know nothing about how little peaches controlled the economy. How much is a banana anyway? Like $5? Batman Begins. With the device that evaporates all the water in Gotham City, it would evaporate the people too. Or at least turn them into human prunes. On a related note, How it should have ended pointed out to me that even if the toxin had to be inhaled through the lungs, there would have been plenty of cases of it affecting people whenever they boiled the water. That explains why my wife freaked out on spaghetti night. Apostrophe. Yeah, but they also thought Jack Gleason played James Jr. when he actually plays a poor kid in the Warrens. So let's not give how it should have ended too much credit for their research and cleverness. The part where he simply turns off the microwave emitter made me spit out my drink laughing though XD. Still don't know why the aliens in Signs came to a planet that's mostly water inhabited by animals that are mostly water, where water will randomly fall from the sky when their only weakness is water. The movie is a lot better if you subscribe to the theory that the aliens are actually demons. It actually makes a lot of sense. It all starts to happen after the protagonist loses his faith. The house is literally attacked right after he refused to pray over supper. We never see the spaceships the aliens came in. The closest thing is two glowing lights in the sky, which a bird flies into and falls, as if it hit something solid. Birds falling from the sky is a biblical sign of the apocalypse. The daughter is repeatedly referred to as an angel, and the water that hurts the aliens is water she drank from, making it holy water if she is literally an angel. And then the most religious region in the world, the Middle East, the birthplace of the Abrahamic religions, is the place specifically mentioned on the radio as having discovered a way to fight the invaders. I mean, it's all bullshit and it's just a shitty movie that doesn't hold up to repeated viewings because Shyamalan was in the middle of his everything must have a twist phase, but it's fun to think about. It actually does hold up though, because it's not just that the thing that drove them off was in the Middle East. It was found in 3 cities in the Middle East, referring to the 3 main Abrahamic religions, and that the thing was an ancient thing, not a modern weapon. It was part of Shyamalan's twisty phase. But it wasn't him writing a bad plot. It was him leaning into a really forced metaphor instead of playing it straight, which ended up looking exactly the same as writing a bunch of plot holes. He loves writing metaphors, and it always sucks. For example, The Happening. In The Day After Tomorrow they leave their building to go get a guy's brother from boarding school. Brother is never mentioned again, and the movie ends with no idea if the brother is dead or alive. Huge plot hole that could have been cleared up by adding or subtracting a sentence or two. Also, when they're in the library, they're burning books instead of the tables and chairs that fill the room, all while having a moral conundrum about burning said books. That was my biggest gripe about the movie. Wood would have burned so much better than the books too. It's actually really hard to light wood if you've no survivorship skills, and even if you did, it's still going to be a pain to light. Most survival guides recommend using grass, twigs and smaller bits of wood going down before logs, because you want to use the heat from the smaller things to get a burn on the larger bits of wood. Someone pointed out that burning the furniture would be a bad idea due to the toxic fumes from materials. But even if you were to burn the furniture, you would need to start with books to get a burn going. So, start with newspapers or pages ripped from smaller books. Set them underneath a thick tome, possibly one not bound in leather, if you can find it. Then put down bits broken off from a chair or table. There's a number of them in the Goonies, but it always bothered me that when Mouth was translating Spanish from the map, he used a British accent and the poem rhymed in English. Ye intruders beware. Tim Burton's Sweeney Todd. How about a literal hole? There is a chair that mechanically dumps the bodies of his victims down a shaft into the basement. The trouble is, there is an exterior shot of Mrs. Lovett's pie shop where you can clearly see that the chair on the second floor is directly above the open room of the bakery. No hole or shaft is possible from this view. Drives me up the wall for an otherwise great flick. Generally not a fan of musicals. Came here to say this. The chair should be dumping the bodies right through the crowded restaurant. I've seen this movie like 60 times, so it hasn't quite ruined it for me, though. Both stagings I've seen of Sweeney Todd have the building arranged differently, so that the bodies, you know, wouldn't go right through the middle of the pie shop. Threat level midnight. The president being revealed to be a bad guy in the movie, and then by the end of the movie he is a good guy again with no explanation. No, he's doing it to catch the president. No, Dwight. He's just being an idiot. Dwigged. I get pissed off by what I call plot stupidity, and I see it all the time in movies and television. For example, an FBI agent will put together a profile from thin air that somehow manages to identify the killer's home address and exactly where they are now. In the meantime, they've missed or ignored the most basic clues that any idiot watching has already picked up on halfway through the show or movie. I was playing a game today, and two of the antagonists not so subtly hinted that they planned to murder each other and had ulterior motives, and neither of them caught on. That moment's the king of plot stupidity. Unbreakable. How does the lead character go his whole life not realizing he can't be hurt, or that he's super strong? Did doctors never try to give him a shot or do a blood test? And as a guy that was involved in sports, he never tried lifting heavier and heavier weights? That's like a fundamental aspect of lifting weights. More than that, he asks ours how many sick days he's taken. If you've never been sick, you're going to know that. I've taken a lot of sick days. In the last Harry Potter movie, he never fixes his goddamn wand with the Elder Wand. I just dug. How could you miss that, Mr. Director? That was such a huge symbolic moment in the books. How could you forget it? Yeah, the movies really suck at some parts. Doesn't he also just put the wand back in the grave instead of destroying it? Yeah. His whole idea is that, as long as he dies of natural causes, the Elder Wand will lie safely with Dumbledore, and then when Harry dies the wand will no longer work for anyone else, since Harry will have died undefeated. Still think that is a plot hole in itself. They just talked about it, that he disarmed Malfoy, so he is the master of the Elder Wand. So he expects that he will never be disarmed his whole life while taking a job as an Auror. I mean, if his career plan was something quiet, why not? I don't think Neville will get disarmed much, but an Auror. In Mean Girls, Regina George handwrites the burn book, but pretends Caddy wrote it. Couldn't they tell by the handwriting that it wasn't her? And the fact so much of the burn book was done before Caddy was even at the school. But why would Regina refer to herself as a fugly slut? Some of it could have been written by Caddy, such as that. But the majority of the burn book was way before Caddy. Well, Miss Norbury did point out that she couldn't have acted alone. But as she was the only one who confessed, and she didn't name any names, so she was really the only one they could punish. In Face Slash Off, Nicolas Cage still has lips and eyelids after his face is cut off. Plus the two men have totally different bodies. Yeah, when he banged his new wife, I always thought, so they have the exact same body hair slash build slash dick size. Because I'm sure she would notice this. You always think about Nick Cage's dick size. Me too, man. Me too. It's not really a plot hole exactly, but in Harry Potter there are those love potions which are basically magical date rape drugs, and it's really not brought up how fucked up that is, and is even made out as a joke. Like, Fred and George sell them at their store, even though their little brother gets frickin' roofied later, and this is just never addressed. They even joked about selling it, I think to either Ginny or Hermione, I forget which, and I'm just, what? Imagine waking up in the nurse's office because John wanted to have sex with you so bad he freaking used a love potion on you, and you two were apparently in a relationship for a month without you knowing, and only got cured because some friend spoke up or something. This reminds me of the movie Ella Enchanted. Ella has a curse where she is forced to be obedient and literally do anything anybody tells her to do. So of course she ends up doing crazy things. At one point the prince asks her to kiss him, so she does instantly, and he has to say, you know, I'm not forcing you, or something along those lines. And that just had me thinking how that curse could be horribly used against her if the wrong people knew about it. Obviously it's a kids movie, so they didn't go into that, but yikes. Oh, definitely some underlining horror to that one. In the book Ella almost gets eaten by ogres because they exploit her curse, and she initially rejects the prince's proposal out of fear of said wrong people. Ella breaking her curse is pretty intense for a kid's book. When they do some impossible stuff and just say it's because of quantum mechanics. If we quantumize the atoms, rephase the lasers, and add some skdibskstanium, it should stabilize the protons in my quantum generator. Every scientist in a movie ever. It's like a law of movies, that the scientist will use the word quantum during any CNC explanation, no matter what the subject matter is. This depends on when the movie was made. Stuff from the 50s called every science-y thing atomic, and after that it was nuclear. True. It's sort of funny to see how these things evolve over the years. Old zombie movies, for example. Way back in the day it was a curse. Then it was satellites or something else from outer space. And in modern times it's been viruses. In the first Mitchell Bay Transformers, we find Megatron has been kept while unconscious in a government installation and are given a full view of where everything is in the room he is kept in. When Megatron awakens, he, without moving his head or view from straight ahead, declares that he is Megatron and intimidating. There's nothing straight in front of him. Everything that direction would be lower than eye level and out of his field of view. He introduces himself to a wall. I think a giant robot would have had cameras from head to toe. Even in the butt crack. Especially in the butt crack. Like 30 goddamn cameras in the butt crack. In the butterfly effect, he goes back in time to elementary school to stab his hands so he could show the stigmata to his cellmate, thus convincing him to defend him from the other prisoners. Except if he had created the stigmata scars as a kid, then he'd have them his whole life. And it wouldn't be a miracle from the perspective of his cellmate. Otherwise that film is pretty damn good. That's the time travel paradox. Because if he had the scars his whole life, he never would have had to go back in time and get the scars to prove the miracle, thus never having the scars. Cycle repeating infinitely. Time travel is whack, and trying to understand it makes everyone's head hurt. Yeah. I'm of the opinion that it's impossible to create a time travel story that makes sense. They're usually fun though. Primer? Yeah, that made sense after an hour and a half of movie and another hour and a half of YouTube explanations. It really bothers me that in various scenes in the Polar Express the train has a different amount of passenger cars. I never focused on that, but shit, now I will. Suicide Squad. They were gathering all these villains to do something, then got sidetracked with the witch, which was a part of the squad, but went rogue and became a threat. Like, what was the original thing they were all gathered to do? Did I miss something? I only saw the movie once, so I'm probably wrong about this, but I was under the impression they were forming the squad as a precautionary measure in case any more Superman type fellows showed up. But then it all went to shit, as you might expect it would. That's what I didn't get. Okay, let's assume a Superman level threat appears. Why the hell would a 120-pound girl with a baseball bat be a possible response? Most of the team didn't have any actual powers. It was a shit movie. In the comics it's more like a extreme 90s sort of feel to it, in that it's a rotating cast of villains who die, escape / double cross. Often enough to have a new villain join the cast, and they typically fight terrorist organizations level stuff. They honestly should have had them fight a warlord smuggling missiles in Africa. The team is C-list villains. The show how brutal they are, and the good one people would empathize with most dies towards the end, with one or two others dying before then. It's Suicide Squad, so member have to die. So it would be like a team of 10 dwindled down to 5, and the sequel would have one of them betray the group to escape. They're villains after all. Their only good thing about the movie was Amanda Waller. She was a cold-hearted bitch true to her character. Gremlins and time zones. Can't feed them after midnight, but it's always midnight somewhere. And when can you feed them? 6 PM is still technically after midnight every day. Mogwai are attuned to the solar cycle and the precise rotation of the earth, which is why they are affected only by midnight in their immediate location. It made sense when I was little. Then it stopped making sense when I grew up. But now you made it make sense again. Thanks, BTW. I don't care how silly it is. I'm taking this as scientific fact. One less thing ruined from my childhood. Looper, not sending the people who needed to be killed back directly into a volcano or middle of the ocean. Beetlejuice is my favorite movie. I started watching it as a kid and watched it weekly through school, almost nightly all through high school. In the afterlife, every dead person looks just like they did when they died. Burned in a house fire, charred, choke on a chicken leg, blue-faced and bone still in throat, get sliced in half. Your legs are now sentient. But Wreck your car off a bridge and break your necks and drown. You look fine. As much as I love the movie and understand that they couldn't have the main characters deformed, I wish they had somehow indicated and showed how they died. They're the only ones who don't look dead. Other than that, I've never watched a better movie. I kinda thought it was, because it was based on those characters' perceptions of themselves. At first they were kinda like in denial about being dead, and later they showed they could change how they appeared, so there's that. I don't know why I never thought of that. Very smart though, and makes a lot of sense. Waterworld. Where do they grow tobacco for smoking? Where do they get paper to roll the cigarettes? It's still my favorite movie of all time. Those are old stale ass cigarettes. The fact that Scully and Mulder just came back from Antarctica all fine with no means of getting out. They didn't even explain that. WTF. There was a later episode of the series where some minor character asks about Antarctica. Long time since I watched it, but I seem to remember both Mulder and Scully and then argued about what they saw or didn't see. The entire Eragon movie. Yeah, the moment when they just killed the Razak. That's when I knew that this terrible movie had no hope of a sequel, because they literally just destroyed the B-plot of Eldest in one scene. Dude, the moment the Razak showed up, fucker that did the concept art for the movie has never read the book, I'm 100% sure.